In the process of making this video, making endless passes back over the script, searching for relevant footage, all that fun stuff, I stumbled back across an ancient video, one that introduced me to parkour before I had ever heard the term. It's called Russian climbing. With French and Russian hip-hop pulsing in the background, as well as the almost obligatory mid-2000s inclusion of Club to Death from The Matrix, the video shows off a couple of guys, well, climbing. While what could barely be called 240p isn't quite as bearable 9 years later, the stunts they pull off still defy imagination. Especially back when I was 14, this kind of thing was mind-blowing. What are they doing? How are they capable of even doing that? Weirdly enough, just watching them carry out feat after death-defying feat was quite freeing, especially for an open-minded kid. The video itself is even surprisingly artistic in how it captures the same stunt with two different camera angles, or how it briefly shows off a first-person viewpoint that conveys the speed of their movement. And again, this was released back in 2006, long before GoPros were showing off the intensity of this high-octane action. Seeing how successful the video was in the grand scheme of prehistoric YouTube and other video sites, it's no surprise to me that the discipline continued to rise in popularity. It's also wonderful that Mirror's Edge rekindled those same feelings just 2 years later, capturing the sensation of watching a little slice of internet history. Developed by the talented members of DICE, it came at a time when Generation 7 was still relatively fresh. Wanting to break away from their Battlefield roots, DICE were great candidates to take a new IP and dash away with it. Combine this with the fact that the Xbox 360 was just 3 years old at the time. The trend was leaning towards a more subdued, realistic palette, and horror games were creeping back into the mainstream. With the video game scene entering a dark and edgy phase, it made Mirror's Edge all the more palatable. Cascades of white complement washes of color, such as blue, yellow, and lime green, creating a bright, vibrant cityscape that is pleasing to the eye. Even though it'll be 7 years old in November this year, Mirror's Edge still looks wonderful, highlighting the importance of strong aesthetic choices, sometimes more so than pure graphical fidelity. There's a quote from senior producer Owen O'Brien that gets at what makes Mirror's Edge so appealing to me. The art direction grew out of the gameplay. We wanted to give people a sense of the world very quickly and move through it very quickly. I wanted a game where I could look at a screenshot and say, hey, that's Mirror's Edge. This makes me appreciate Studio DICE even more for setting out to make a varied and unique experience. It's something I've come to value more and more highly over the years. Despite how impressive it may be, graphical prowess will never capture my attention over a game that knows what it is and stands by it. That's why I still find The Wind Waker to be so charming and wonderful more than a decade after its release, as it relies on its art style and theming to carry it, not just a famous name. And talk about a game that didn't need a remake. Not that I mind Nintendo doing that, I'm just saying. And don't get me wrong, that isn't to say that gray and gloomy can't also have its charms. Bloodborne has arrived in 2015 veiled in darkness, but with dashes of gothic architecture, Lovecraftian horror, and blood, it stands out from the pack. Mirror's Edge fits the same criteria. Color aside, it dares to do just a little bit more. So what about the premise then? You play as Faith, a runner who uses her immense skill set to transport messages the imperious city government doesn't want leaked. Sounds antiquated, but when just about every phone line and internet browser is being carefully monitored at every waking hour, there's little anyone else can do to get the word out. This is a city ruled by fear and conformity, a place where simple freedoms like smoking and drinking are banned. Now, whether you participate in such acts is kind of irrelevant. To the person behind the controller, these are foreign concepts. Our society just isn't like this, and so it makes it much easier to identify with Faith and her companions. And quite frankly, if a government's rule is still marked by the utter destruction of a protest against them 18 years prior, well, the opposition is understandable. Turns out a man named Robert Pope is running for mayor under the platform of deregulation. A noble cause, and one that would likely give him some support from those already attempting to depose the current system. But it puts him at risk. As it so happens, Faith becomes embroiled in a plot that goes down to the fabric of the city's foundation. Pope is murdered early on, with the blame pinned squarely on her sister's shoulders. Now, I won't claim the story is particularly noteworthy in its scope. The idea of a rebellious group emerging from an oppressed society's callous ideologies isn't exactly new. However, Mirror's Edge's strong aesthetic choices help to accentuate its story and theming to a level that distinguishes it from previous examples and contemporaries. And again, it returns to the potency consistency of visuals in framing the story. Sure, we've already established that the game is gorgeous, being strangely colorful and vibrant, yet there's a sterility to the city that places the anti-freedom vibe front and center. As you dash through offices and warehouses, swaths of color dominate the scene. It wants you to feel at ease, as if everything is right with the world, but it's all too clean. It feels like a government trying to keep prying eyes away by saying, check out our wonderful facilities, look at all the white and the color and the organization. There's no way people could be unhappy working in a place like this. And yet, through Faith's eyes, you continue to discover that this city is not what it seems. It's fascinating how much you can enhance a story and its themes through strong visuals. Now, symbolism can be a tiresome prospect, with folks hyper-examining every single aspect of a story. A lot of the time, the beauty and simplicity of that narrative is muddled by the symbolism they so desperately sought out. Clearly, symbolism and I became great friends in AP Lit. Yet, in Mirror's Edge, the basic symbolism of white contrasted with bright colors complements the story, and that's all it needs to be. Again, Mirror's Edge knows what it is and charges ahead with it. Now, as much as I have a huge appreciation for all of that, at the end of the day, the game has to play well. It's a good thing then that Mirror's Edge is for the most part a rousing combination of perilous jumps, dashes, wall runs, and more. There's a preciseness to your movements as you swiftly climb piping and sprint across rooftops. And when you see how easily real-life parkourers glide through cities, it's relieving that DICE took the necessary steps to make these aspects, the primary source of gameplay, as simple and natural as possible. Yet despite the fact that Faith and her friends are combating the government, it's strange then when you must fight, as the combat controls are clunky. It's been said before, so I'll keep this brief, but with such great control over the free-running aspects of the game, and with a few chase scenes in the game being such hair-raising and rewarding experiences, Mirror's Edge could have placed more of its focus on getting out of trouble through Faith's unique skill set. Playing to the strengths of these different and well-designed mechanics would have only served to make it an even more rewarding and unique experience. And this would have only made the themes within the game more potent too. Freedom, where no one else can lay a hand on you because of your wit and your skill. Escapism. Facing up against multiple foes wielding both powerful weapons and defenses isn't exactly an enticing prospect, especially when, as capable as you are in the role of Faith, you're just one person. Seeking relief from all the unpleasantries of this city would have only pushed the story's framework more so to the fore. While I would call the combat a misstep, the rest of the game is nothing short of breathtaking, with death-defying rooftop slides, massive wall runs, and leaps that laugh in the face of gravity. Exciting and rewarding, it's kept me coming back ever since its release. At its core, Mirror's Edge is a simple game. The mechanics are rigid, bound to just a few button presses, the environments are polished and bright, and the story is at its core approachable. Yet underneath this exterior, it's brimming with subtle details, connecting the game's pieces together into a cohesive experience. It's not perfect, but it certainly did its best to stand out from the crowd. With a prequel in the works, there's no better time to step into the futuristic, dystopian world of Mirror's Edge, and I urge you to check out this game if you've yet to scamper your way through it. And unlike the citizens of this fictional society, you're free to make that decision for yourself.